In 1979, the world's longest wooden roller coaster debuted, the Beast at Kings Island. I'm Don Helbig alongside Ryan Sir, and this is Tower Topics.
You sure do love the Beast, don't you, Don?
I do. It's a ride that when it opened, it broke all existing records as the tallest, the longest, the fastest wooden roller coaster out there. There was nothing else, like it. There's really been nothing else like it since. Just the way that ride is built. It's built within 35 acres of wooded terrain. Just phenomenal. I mean, no other park has built one that long. They've built them taller and faster now, but it's still unique, still special. And here we are, 44 years after it opened. Everyone still loves it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be remiss if I didn't, kick off by saying legendary night rides. And I think the real appeal of the Beast, because a lot of the people that are, roller coaster enthusiasts, they kind of downgrade because it doesn't have a lot of airtime and stuff. But I think that nighttime traveling through the woods, lost, going several different directions, not knowing where you are, disoriented feeling is really the best part of the ride. Would you agree?
It is. I mean, that's the next level of thrill. When you're riding roller coasters or night rides, and nothing tops the Beast. When you come to the night ride experience, it's really an adrenaline pumping excitement there.
Yeah, it really is. Now, let's talk about some fun things about the Beast. I mean, everybody that doesn't live under a rock knows about the Beast. But there are some little
Yep.
factoids about the Beast that are kind of interesting. Let's start with the most recent one. So the Beast was 7,359 feet. That's not true anymore. What happened?
Well, they added a couple of extra feet to it when they did some reprofiling of the first drop, and then you come out and you go around that turn, coming out of that first drop tunnel. That work added a couple of extra feet of track, so last year kind of broke its own record for that. I think it made the ride better
Hmm.
than it was, a lot smoother going down that first drop and then making that turn. It was a little abrupt, a little hard as the ride aged through there. So I think they really did a great job. And we're talking about the Gravity Group who came in and did that work. So they made the ride a lot better. But it's really withstood the test of time. You look back to 1979 when it opened, rave reviews. You get your first time Beast Riders now, rave reviews, same rave reviews. So it really has withstood the test of time. And you don't see that, rides that are in their 40s that still are playing to those same reviews.
Yeah, my friend's son loves to ride the ride. His name's Noah. He just got tall. I've referenced him on the show before, but he just got tall enough to ride some like Mystic and all that stuff. And even though he's well aware of the fact that the Beast is this old ride and Mystic's the new one, and there's Adventure Express and so on, he thinks the Beast is the best one, and I don't think there's many arguments against that. Now, there have been some
No,
changes to the Beast. One thing is that they started with 4 bench trains with buzz bars, and then they went down to three benches. When did that happen?
that happened after the 1980 season. It wasn't, making the turns and, the transitions as well as they would have liked, was putting a lot of stress on the track. So from a maintenance perspective and to make it a better ride experience, they just shortened it down to the 3 bench. So that's something that, one of the changes that you saw. And then in 1991, that's when it went from the buzz bars to the individual lap bars that you see today. So that was another significant change to the Beast.
Yeah, if you guys reference our other podcast, the Attractions Group podcast, Tom Rebbe from Philadelphia Toboggan talked about how Six Flags wanted that technology. They wanted the individual lap bars for the Texas Giant at the time, and that's it kind of spread out from there. So you have them to thank for that. But what was the experience like? I never got to ride it with the Buzz Bar. What was that experience like? How did it contrast with what you see today?
Well, I mean, it was, you can still go to some parks and still find the buzz bars that are out there. I mean, it's rare, but you can still find them. It was what I was used to, what I grew up with. So to me, it wasn't, anything different. I hadn't experienced the individual lap bars. They didn't have the seat divider that you now
Hmm.
have. So, it was a little more comfortable that way, maybe. Um, but really, I mean, it changed the ride, but not dramatically when they went to the individual lap bars.
So there wasn't like any kind of big uproar or anything with people when they showed up in 1991, and there were these big orange individual lap bars as opposed to
No, the average park guest, no, and they probably didn't even
right.
notice, but the coaster enthusiast, for sure they noticed. And, I knew it was coming at the end of the 1990 season. Once they got into fall operation, they had one of the cars. on the racer. They put the individual lap bars
Hmm.
on to experiment with it, see how it was going to work. So you knew that was coming, and it was going to come to the beast the following year.
Hmm.
Other changes. We're talking about the lap bars. Um, is also in 1986 is when you got the headrest. So it didn't have the headrest for the
Yeah.
longest time. From 1979 through 85, but in 86 the headrests were introduced. So that was another change to the trains.
Yeah, and then another change. Now, this is a change, but the truth is, they ran out of time. Was with the helix at the end, the double helices, that was not enclosed the first year, but that was always intended to be
No, no, no.
enclosed, right?
It was not totally enclosed. You're right. And my first ride on it in 1979, that was an amazing experience going through that tunnel without it being boarded up because you just saw this lumber come flying at
Hmm.
you. So it was really a great experience with that. I enjoyed it. I liked it that way. But the tunnel really added another element to the ride. And then also they enclosed the mid-course tunnel. That was not always like that. There were two shorter tunnels, but it was too light. So when you went through, right away you saw the light at the end of the tunnel there, and then you went around and you went through another tunnel, and then they enclosed that as well going into 1980.
Yeah, they did that so also so they could break the record for the longest tunnel at the time, I believe.
It made it the fourth tunnel, when they added the
Okay.
enclosed the helix and then, did it that way. But what was really interesting about the Beast is when Kings Island in 1976, they started talking about adding another roller coaster. The first thought was to just replicate the Shooting Star, which had been immensely popular at Cincinnati's Coney
Hmm.
Island. But as they began, planning to reconstruct that, and as they went around to other parks and rode different roller coasters to try to get ideas, they kind of realized that I think we need to do a different type of roller coaster. We have something similar in the Racer
Yeah.
to the Shooting Star. Is that really gonna, be that great? Are we gonna have two rides that are too close to the same? And they had that special place in that corner of the park where they could really build something unique, something special, something legendary, and that's what they did.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the photos I've seen from very early in the Beast history, the track almost looks like, not the track, but the structure looks almost red. Was it red, or is that just like because of old photos or whatever?
It was stained, so what I wouldn't call it
Hmm.
red. It was more of like a, I don't know, auburn maroon kind of, maybe a maroon kind of color
Hmm.
more than anything else, but it was stained the whole track. And, when it first opened, it looked beautiful like that. But as the years have gone by and you've replaced different pieces of track, it's either the original color of the wood or it's faded from when it was stained.
Yeah, that's true. Um, yeah, so you obviously you became well known in the industry because of your racer rides, but there was somebody that was doing something similar on the Beast. This guy named Carl Eichelman. Tell us about him.
Carl Eichelman, yeah, he was definitely a character. Loved the Beast. I don't know anyone that I ever have come across that loved the Beast and maybe even roller coasters more than Carl. He became fascinated about the ride he saw. He lived up in Dayton at the time, and he saw on Channel 2, they had some aerial footage of where the coaster was going to go when they announced it in July of 1978. They didn't have a name yet, but he saw aerial footage of how many acres this was going to cover. And again, we talked about it before, 35 acres. He just became, just so excited about it, mesmerized by the stats that he was hearing. Couldn't believe anything was going to, be built like this. And here's a guy that had traveled the country and he rode all the, like the Santa Cruz roller
Hmm.
coaster, Coney Island Cyclone. That's the kind of rides that were out there at that time, and those were among his favorites. But this was going to blow all those away. So he started calling the park all the time, asking for updates. And then eventually the park's PR manager at the time, Ruth Voss, she wrote back. And at this time, there's no email. Just keep that in mind. There's no email or anything like that. So it's all handwritten
Hmm.
letters. So she writes back and she says, Carl, I can't tell you how many new bolts we put in today or this week or anything like that. And then she sent him a press kit and with some construction pictures. And she said, we'll invite you to Media Day. So he probably was the first coaster enthusiast, to maybe get invited to a Media Day event. I don't know outside of, um, some others that, were known at the time for traveling around, and being on these different, talk shows. And that there's maybe four or five, known people at the time. Um, Paul Rubin being one of them, one of those people. So Carl goes to Media Day. He rides it 6 times. It's pouring down rain.
Hmm.
He's one of the few that wanted to ride it over and over again. So there's a phone in the B station, and Carl worked for the IRS. So he gets off the ride, he's holding up the phone and he's saying, "Can you hear the ride? Can you hear the ride? Listen to the sound." And he was just so excited about it. And it ended up, Carl rode it over 500 times the first year. By the time 1981 rolled around, when I started riding the Racer, he hit 2,000 rides. He ended up with 4,444. Um, for non-consecutive rides and documented rides, he would have the record for the most rides on the Beast. There's others that may claim they have more, whatever. But in terms of, being documented, Carl's got the record.
That's true. That's on the authority. Now, you mentioned Ruth Voss, who was the legendary PR person at the time. So she came up with the name, right?
She did. They were struggling, to come up with different names, and they had different focus groups that they were, showing the ideas that they had. But whenever the maintenance guys would either come into her office or she'd go down to their office and just ask for updates so she could, let the media know how the progress was going, they would always refer to it as, "Man, that thing is a beast of a project." And it was. You're building it out in, the woods and, trying to get all the different, trucks and things and surveying and just, you know, just a lot of challenges with building it. And, so they kept referring to it as a beast of a project. So she thought, that might not be a bad name. So she presented that to the marketing team and the general manager, and, they liked the idea of it. They thought, wow, this could be a really unique logo. And they came up with a great one. And that, again, is something that's withstood the test of time. Still one of the top selling pieces of merchandise is anything with the beast on it. And then they presented that to, their focus group, and it caught on. They thought that really conjured up, something that was big, mean, aggressive, not just your, everyday roller coaster that you're going to find anywhere else in the country. So the Beast became the name. And what's interesting nowadays, you got to have the name and the backstory and all those things figured out before you can even announce what you're doing the next, with a new attraction. Back then, it was February 6th when the name was announced and the ride opened April 14th officially. April 13th was the media day. So just, a couple months difference. You'd never see that today. But they nailed it. Of all the names out there and all the logos, and I've gone to places where I've had like a Beast shirt on, and I'll be at an airport or something. Somebody right away they know where it's at. Or if you say where you're from, and you say the Cincinnati area, and they're all like, "Oh, Kings Island, the Beast." So it's known around the world.
Absolutely. And it's the name is part of the lore to it too. If this were a corporate park and it was, you know, Superman the ride, Batman the ride, something like that, it just wouldn't hit the same way, I don't think. So I'm glad it's an original
No, it
logo, and
wouldn't.
yeah.
And one of the other things, challenges in building the Beast, we're going back 1976, 77 when they're talking about this. Now they got to design it. Um, a real unique challenge in building the Beast was having to do all the calculations by hand. There weren't any computers back then that you have today where you can design it. You know exactly what it's going to do, and you know make all your changes and everything on a computer. No, it was all hand calculations, and you had to get it right. So it was Al Collins and Jeff Gramke are the ones that designed it. And the park originally reached out to John Allen.
hmm
He had designed many roller coasters, including the Racer. He was in retirement. They reached out to him, pitched the idea, and he was, yeah, guys, getting ready to retire, not interested, anything like that. And then they brought him out to the park thinking if they showed him the area where it could go and what he would have to work with, they thought that would get the juices flowing. So they take him up to the International Restaurant. Again, he's like, "Guys, I just don't have, the time to take on a project like that. I'm, getting ready to retire, but you can build it
hmm
yourself. I'll show you how to design it." And he took a menu in the International Restaurant and he wrote down all the different formulas, and the park executives, kind of looked at that, and, the next day they showed Al Collins and Jeff Gramke and they were, "What do you think?" And they were like, "Sure, we can do it." So they were able to design it themselves. That's something you would never see today, is a roller coaster that's built, not only built in-house, but also designed in-house. But they didn't have those computers, and they had what they called slide rules
hmm
uh, to come up with all the calculations and things, and doing all the surveying. And it was really difficult too, because it wasn't like just open land where you can survey and get distances and things. You had to go around these trees, and what we're going to cut out, what trees we're going to keep.
hmm
Just a tremendous challenge, and I think that's what makes it even more remarkable is just what went in to designing the ride and how they made that fit into that area, and what they decided to keep with the trees, what they decided not to keep with the trees, and how they used the terrain to build the coaster. It's not a lot of, it's not out and back, up and down like the racer. It really is a journey through the
Yeah,
woods.
it truly is. Now, I'm under the understand. I've never seen it myself, but I understand that menu where John Allen wrote those formulas still exists somewhere.
It does exist somewhere. Exactly where it is, I don't
Yeah.
know, but it is out there somewhere. I have seen all the hand calculations, the books that they had, all the different files that were available. So I did have an opportunity to see that when the coaster was celebrating, anniversaries 35 and 40. I was able to take a look at those again, and for me that was exciting. To be able to look back and just see, it's in pen or pencils, how they design that. I do have blueprints. I was able to get some of those. We was given some originals, given some copies, over the years, and so I have a little treasure trove of Beast memorabilia there that no one else has, maybe outside of the park officials. But really, I mean, just a special coaster for me, special coaster for a lot of enthusiasts, and I really think back, the American Coaster Enthusiast celebrating 45 years this year. So 1978 was their first year, but I really think the Beast and the American Coaster Enthusiast, they kind of grew up
Hmm.
together, and I think they really helped each other too over the years, because anytime they wanted to do a story in 79 or 1980, representatives from the American Coaster Enthusiast were the ones that were the best salespeople Kings Island could have had. They would come in from Los Angeles, blown away by the ride. They're going back to Los Angeles, telling all their friends, "You got to get to Cincinnati. You got to ride the Beast." And in those early years, 79 through the mid 80s, the number of people I met and still remain friends with today, from coast to coast, who came specifically to ride the Beast. I mean, it's an incredibly high number.
That's awesome. Yep. So the Beast has been thrilling people since 1979, the world's largest wooden coaster, whose record's only been broken once, and that was by the Beast last year. So that's awesome. Cool. Well, make sure that you follow us on all of your favorite podcast apps. If you prefer the audio version, there's a video version on YouTube by searching for Tower Topics. I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.